Today's episode is sponsored by our friends at Famous Faces and Funnies, located in Melbourne, Florida. Hey, check out their Facebook Live auctions and whatnot auctions for games, back issues, and comics. Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Codename YouTube 02. Hi, I'm your presenter, Shibu Are You. We're going to do our monthly comic book pickup episode. And of course, thanks to our sponsors, Famous Faces and Funnies, located in Melbourne, Florida. They've been a sponsor of this channel since 2014, and I couldn't do it without them. And as you see right here, I have my co-host, Tort. Now, what's interesting about Tort is he was disappeared for a few days and he decided to show back up. So I'm glad to have him back. My regulars have seen Tort when he was a little hatchling to now look at the size of this guy. He is huge. Well, anyway, we'll let him go. I know a lot of people have been asking me about updates because I really don't post stuff about my pets, but that's Tort. He's a big boy now. But anyway, we got an exciting episode. And again, I just want to make an announcement. I did a couple videos back to back. We did our second graded magazine unboxing episode, which will appear shortly after this one. And I did this one kind of back to back. Now, I am broadcasting from my hallway versus being inside the retro room. That's because the last time SpaceX had a rocket launch, the sonic boom kind of knocked over some stuff on the top shelf. I'm talking about my 1982 G.I. Joe collection. So inside that room is a mess, but more importantly, a little bit of a heartache. I think Steeler is the only casualty in that whole fiasco. But we'll talk about that a little later. We got an excellent batch of comic books to check out. My regulars will attest that we don't only focus in on modern new books, we also look at some back issues, kind of geared towards the fellow Gen Xers. What books are you more inclined to pick up, look, or reminisce about? And I think we got an excellent collection, excellent mix for the fellow Gen Xer. Now, there's really no theme to this. Basically, it's a way for all of us to discuss and reminisce about iconic books from our childhood, as well as look at some new offerings that might pique the interest of the fellow Gen Xers. I try to be diverse in my selection while picking up the usual suspects. So with that said, the first book is absolutely the hottest book. Besides Frank Miller's Wolverine #1, I think 1 and 2 would be this book, and that is Wolverine issue number 88, the first appearance or the first meetup of Wolverine and Deadpool. That's right. Now, what's interesting about this book is that people often forget that living legend Larry Hama was the writer for this. Coming off of the G.I. Joe run, which ended in 1994, Larry was in a transitional state. But what's amazing when you read this is how Larry was able to go from G.I. Joe to, and at the time he was writing Wolverine. He was Wolverine's main writer during this stage. He did issue number 50. He did quite a bit of the Wolverine run. So how he was able to capture Claremont's Wolverine as well as Liefeld's Deadpool is absolutely a credit to his writing. And I think I've seen all of these modern comic kiddos talk about this issue and not point that out. That's what makes a writer a professional. And I think Larry often, I've said it many times, he gets overlooked, but how he did that for this is absolutely remarkable. But what's interesting also about this book is that in a couple years ago, you could have picked this up for $15, $20, maybe $12, not anymore, with prices starting between $40 to $100. I've seen this book go. So kind of kicking myself for not picking this up a lot sooner, but thanks to our connections with Famous Faces and Funnies, Rick and the team kind of put this on side and decided that it would be worthwhile to showcase in this video. So if you're able to find one, definitely pick it up, because I think this book, unlike a lot of movie specs, has some legs to it. I mean, you're dealing with two of the top, 5 MCU Marvel characters today. What's interesting is that, I know I talked to GIJOE Comics. He's another YouTube channel. A lot of Gen Xers they're not attached to Deadpool as a millennial or some of these younger guys. I mean, honestly, for myself, I never got Deadpool. I never was a hardcore fan. To me, he was just a Snake Eyes that could talk. He was also a Spider-Man amped up to another level of annoyance. So that was my assessment of Deadpool. Not a very original character Rob Liefeld created. He just took a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and there's Deadpool. But I digress. He is very popular with these younger people. So I think that this book has a lot of legs. If you cannot get the New Mutants 98 or 93, I forget his first appearance, or the Frank Miller Wolverine #1, or of course Hulk 181. This is definitely one of the ones you should definitely target, that's still within budget, but has some legs and strength. So Wolverine issue number 88, definitely a must pick up. So the next book we're going to take a look at, I kind of mentioned it during our last monthly pickup, and it is definitely fun to be a Gen Xer, because not only do we have G.I. Joe and Transformers doing great, we also have a Thundercats offering. So this is Thundercats issue number 2, and we got two versions of it. We got the variant foil cover with Chitara, and the guys at Famous Faces know that I definitely target the Chitara covers more so than any other, and rightfully so. But I love this cover. I think this is really nicely done. The storyline is pretty interesting. It is good. There's a lot of things that we're familiar with those that watch the cartoon series. There's also going to be a new character introduced in this, so that's definitely a book to pick up. Is this a first appearance of a new Thundercat? Hold on a second. I think Tort is up to something. Oh, there he is. He's fine. I thought he got into the cat litter. And I do have to worry about shit like that. But going back to this, this is a first appearance of a new Thunderian. So definitely a book to pick up. It's starting slow. I know I talked to a friend. They said they're kind of disappointed, but they're kind of world building. The first 3 or 4 issues, you're expected to do that if you're going to do it right. So I see that they're trying to bring in new readers, as well as, old fans and new readers, by kind of like reintroducing the Thundercats. Thundera blew up. They're on Third Earth. They encounter the reptiles. The reptiles are actually, the mutants, I should say, are more, what is cool is it's more violent. It's more adult. The kids one, you didn't see them like slashing or cutting or doing any of that stuff. In this comic series, they do that. So I appreciate that a lot. It has grown with the Gen Xer. But it's coming along slowly. But just like with my rule on every comic book, 3 issues I give every book to get its legs. And I think this is in the right direction. If it's slow, that's okay. By, I think, issue 3, things will start picking up, because Mumra finally reveals himself. And that's no surprise. I'm not giving away anything, but you see him kind of like in the background. but I think they're trying to bring in Mumra as the real bad, slowly but surely, in a conniving, manipulative way that Mumra from the cartoon was known to do. So I think that they're doing a pretty good job with this. So I highly recommend picking up and enjoying the Thundercats series. So this is definitely has been a pleasant surprise, and I'm really enjoying it so far. Thundercats issue number 2. Alrighty, our next book is actually a repeat. I got another copy of a 90s icon. We're talking about Beavis and Butthead issue number 1. Now, I had one of these already sent and graded and sent back by our good friends at PGX. I have since passed that book along to another collector, and I think they're enjoying it. They're big Beavis and Butthead fans. So, what better way than to pass on that to another collector? And I was able to pick up another copy of this. The Beavis and Butthead resurgence has kind of died down a little bit. I know when the Paramount streaming service first started becoming more prominent, they had a new Beavis and Butthead series. A lot of 90s, we talk about the Gen X 80s nostalgia. Well, there's also a 90s one going on simultaneously. So picking up this is actually a good pickup, because Beavis and Butthead has had quite a bit of impact as far as our pop culture. One thing I didn't mention when we did that other unboxing for the graded one is that there's actually a rare red glove variant that I wasn't aware of at the time. So we see this glove is kind of like a pinkish color. There's actually one cover with a red glove that is like really rare. So if you're able to pick that up, that's definitely one to target. I initially forgot like what this looked like. I thought it was a blue glove, and then this one was the rare one. So I was like, ooh, when I saw it, I quickly scooped it up. But then when I looked at it and a little bit more research, there's a pink glove and there's a red glove. So this is the normal regular one. This is the direct edition, but still, it's definitely worth picking up. I don't think I'm going to send this off to grading. This will probably be, put in the long box just for, sunny day for when there's another Beavis and Butthead resurgence. But definitely one to pick up and put away in your collection. All right, so my regulars know that I am a diehard Elvira fan for 2 obvious reasons. But this is the latest story arc in the Elvira series. Elvira meets H.P. Lovecraft. I actually talked to the writer, David Avallone, last night. I asked him why H.P. Lovecraft. Now, for some people that don't know, one of his works is The Call to Cthulhu. Now, people hear that and they think the Metallica song, but really it is a writing offered by H.P. Lovecraft, who was around in the I want to say like 1920s, 1930s, around that time. He's a very controversial figure. He's one of the first writers of horror and sci-fi. He was basically Stephen King before Stephen King. But this guy was anti-Semitic. He was a racist. He was a bigot. He was just a nasty human being, a sexist. So I asked him, like, why did you pick him out of all the characters? And his answers was that, Elvira meets some of the worst, wretched people. Like, he visited, of course, Vlad the Impaler. He met Edgar Allan Page, and H.P. like making fun of these notoriously horrible people is actually, it's kind of like getting revenge. And that's paraphrasing what David Avallone kind of told me. There is a MacGuffin. There is a book that H.P. Lovecraft wrote that kind of is I kind of say that it's kind of preventing like this God war, like, of these evil, because she's dealt with the hell, she's dealt with all kinds of crazy ass shit, but this one is going to be interesting. Right off the bat, the verbiage is a little bit more difficult as far as flowing fluidly. I struggled with that, but again, this is the first setting up the whole story arc. The artwork is phenomenal. Elvira's dialogue, it feels like it's coming from Elvira. David Avallone has been doing this since the first story arc, Mistress of the Dark, then Elvira meets Vincent Price, then Elvira in Horrorland. He's continuing on with the Elvira series, and I think he's the right choice. Not many writers are able to capture, if this was Cassandra Peterson, these would be coming out of her mouth. So I think that David does an excellent job with that. And I'm going to look forward to this. Of course, we always get the photo variant covers. I've been collecting this since Elvira Mistress of the Dark. I have like a stack this big of the entire Elvira series. It's quite entertaining, quite hysterical. I'm interested to see how this pans out, and we're just going to enjoy it and see where it takes us. So Elvira meets H.P. Lovecraft, issue number 1. All right, our next book. I don't know how I feel about it. Let's put it that way. One of my favorite female superheroes is Spider-Woman. I think the Jessica Drew costume is one of the best there is. It's tasteful. It's awesome. I always loved Spider-Woman. I think she's a cool character. She's not just a female version of Spider-Man. She has her own abilities that kind of similar but completely different. I always love that about Spider-Woman. So this is Spider-Woman issue number 2 with the Peach Momoko variant cover. Now, Peach Momoko is the new bee's knees as far as these modern comic kids. Her art, she's a Japanese artist, but they seem to be, she's like the new Todd McFarlane, I guess, for this era. A lot of people love her artwork. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of this style of artwork. I think it's, interesting, but her take on this cover is preying on Jessica Drew's biggest fear, losing control over her power. So this cover is kind of amplifying that fear notion. So nightmares, they're calling the nightmare covers that she's doing. So this is Jessica Drew's nightmare coming to life. Now, the story inside is really difficult. Here's the thing. There are different tiers of superheroes and supervillains. It kind of gets confusing when you're with the third and fourth tier of baddies and good guys. You're like, who the hell is this? Why are they here? So the whole synopsis is that Hydra kind of like has made everyone forget about Jessica Drew's son. She has a son now, and she's on a quest to kind of find him and bring him back. He's been sent to another dimension. Hydra is behind it. There's a gang war going on in New York at the same time with a character by the name of Black Diamond. And the first thing I think of is the Kiss song. But he's like a lower kingpin, so there's a gang war going on in that side of New York. And Hydra is kind of like the facilitator to these lesser gangs that are trying to control their area. At the meantime, this Black Diamond gangster is giving his goons this synthetic type of pheromone that kind of amplifies their ability. So think about it as like a a drug-induced super serum or something like that. But Jessica Drew is trying to get the formula for this because to stop the gang war, and she knows that all leads up to Madam uh, Viper, who is kind of like the Dawn, so to speak, of everything. I guess I'm gonna have to the other Spider-Woman run that came before this to me was a disappointment. I mean, I was reading up to issue 6 and I gave up on that shit. Um, it's just tough to kind of make connections with characters, especially for a Gen Xer that you have no idea who the hell these people are, and they're not the who's who or the people that we knew from back in the day. So while I'm open and to try new things and to just be open-minded, there's still no familiarity with these baddies. The only person I know is Spider-Woman, and that alone isn't enough to sustain you to keep going forward. So am I going to give this? I'm probably going to, again, stick with my 3-issue rule. I picked up issue number 2. I will pick up issue number 3 and 4, and then we'll revisit my assessment after that. But again, even though I'm not a big fan of the cover, I still think it's interesting. It's just her style of artwork it's not the norm. So I don't know why, like, I picked it up. It's just maybe it just caught my eye as something being different. And it's like one of the times when you look at something like, I don't know if I like it or hate it, but you still like gravitate towards it. So that's where I feel about this issue. Spider-Woman issue number 2. Alrighty, our next book I think is often overlooked, but what's going on with Batman? Um, Sorry, I had a call coming through the thing. But anyway, what's going on with Batman? We know that the James Gunn thing, Batman is not coming into the Superman Legacy movie. There's been talks of, Batman's son, Damon, Damon Wayans, to be the new Robin. But there's also stuff about Tim Drake. Tim Drake was the Robin after Dick Grayson. And this story, A Lonely Place of, like, I want to start everything off with, a death in the family, the death of Robin. This was my era of Batman. I could not get enough of this shit. And just revisiting, flipping through the pages is such a dash of nostalgia. The Tom DeCarlo, I think that's the name, DeCarlo's artwork and everything. It's just wonderful. To me, that is Batman. Like, I know a lot of people think about Neil Adams and stuff, and rightfully so, but this whole era of Batman, the 90s, is just amazing. They had A Lonely Place of Dying is basically, this was after the death of Dick Grayson, when Batman was just not caring about himself and just going crazy. He was reckless, and Tim Drake was this kid who kind of like was wondering what happened to Robin. And he kind of brings Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne together again after all these years of separation. And he, for the first time, this is the first time he puts on the Robin outfit. And of course, Batman is dead set against it. But Alfred and Dick Grayson, and then even Batman realized, like, yeah. And I think there's a line in it. It's like, why do you wear that uniform? And why does a policeman wear his uniform? So you don't want to let the criminals win just because they killed Robin. You want them to know that Robin cannot be killed. That the essence of Batman and Robin lives on. It carries on, whether in spirit or in reality. But you can't retire Robin just because Jason Todd died. And I think that's pretty strong argument for Tim Drake. And I will say this: Tim Drake is probably the best Robin out of Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Batman's son, Damian Wayans. He is the best detective out of all of them. And now he's as Red Robin. But still, Tim Drake should not be overlooked. He is probably, this is a key issue, but it's an attainable key issue. And A Lonely Place of Dying is an underrated story arc. You have the death in the family, Batman Year 3, and then A Lonely Place of Dying. You read those 3 story arcs, they're all connected together, and they all come around this time frame. And that's being reunited with this book is so cool. Just flipping through the pages in that artwork, that is Batman in the late 80s, early 90s. That is just perfect. And you can't top that to me. I think that's pretty cool. So Batman issue 442, part 5 of A Lonely Place of Dying. Definitely check that one out. Alrighty. Our next book I kind of talked about in the last 2 months. It's one of those titles that I think when people read it, they're going to enjoy it. And I'm pleasantly surprised and I'm hooked into it. Now, modern times, everybody is terrified of AI. But we're seeing the beginning of what AI will eventually evolve to. This series is the end of AI, basically. One of the final evolutions of AI before they start killing us. But Red Light number 3 is basically a AI humanoid, I think. It's like a robot made to look like a human who escapes a brothel. But she escapes to save a child and she's like, all she's known is what's inside that place. And I talked about it last month as well. So in this episode, she finally escapes and she's out in the real world for the first time. She's watching how other AIs are treated like nothing. Like there's they have an ultimate fighting tournament with 2 AI robots beating each other up. And she's kind of like appalled at the fact that no one even bats an eyelash as far as, and they fight to the death, like the AI that's killed off. And, all they care about is the money that they get. It's kind of a metaphor for slavery at the same time. There's more into it. When does, are you supposed to feel apathy for this or not? I mean, just because it looks like a girl and looks like a child, is it still considered a child or a woman? These are all the type of underlying themes that are going on. It's really good. I can't wait for issue number 4. So Red Light is definitely a book that you should look at and consider because it raises a lot of questions about humanity and its relationship to AI. As far as we're seeing this stage, with fake deep fakes and all that other stuff. But this is a totally an evolved level of AI, where it's taken on a human form, interacting. It knows your thoughts. It knows your intimacy. It knows everything. And do you still treat it as a human or do you treat it as a thing? So this thing raises a lot of questions and I'm really enjoying it. Our next book, another trip down memory lane. And this book is targeted because of the cover. A lot of these books throw in real world celebrities, sneak it in there every now and then. I know there's a Spider-Man book or an Avengers book with Eminem on it, and that has skyrocketed in value. Well, what if I told you World's Finest issue number 25, the anniversary, 25th issue anniversary, features the Shatner. William Shatner is on the cover. Now, he has nothing to do with the story. Nothing. He is not a part of the story at all. But just the fact that it's 90-year-old William Shatner on the cover is something that I definitely wanted to pick up and add, because I mean, I'm not a Trekkie at all. Like, you know, I'm more inclined to I was more inclined to Star Wars versus Star Trek. But, you know, it's fucking William Shatner. Like, you know, so I definitely wanted to add this. And at 90, we don't know if this is the last time we'll ever see him. You know, knock on wood, we see him more. But we don't know if this is the last comic book cover appearance he will make. So I definitely wanted to pick this up and add to my collection. Now what's inside is a wonderful story, actually. This is more geared for the old superpowers type of feeling. You know, we see that my lunchbox here, but that's what the vibe I got with this cover. It feels like you're reliving a Super Friends episode. And the funny thing is the oddball pair of Lex Luthor and the Joker. The Joker, there's a MacGuffin of a ancient scroll that if you read it, you'll go mad and insane. Who better to decipher it than a person that's already insane, the Joker? So Lex Luthor kind of breaks the Joker out, kind of like employs his services to help him find this, what's at the end of the tunnel, which is a MacGuffin, able to control past, present, or future. It's like some crystal that they're supposed to find. But what's interesting is who comes in to save the day. And you will not expect it at all. So this is a wonderful read, and I really enjoyed this book. I mean, this is the first time I jumped into the World's Finest title, but I was pleasantly surprised with this. It was a fun read. I felt like it was a Super Friends episode, and they even dress up like the Super Friends and Superpower episodes. So I really did have a good time with this book. Highly recommended. If you're able to find the Shatner cover, definitely add it to your collection because it's fucking William Shatner. All right. So the next two books I'm going to focus in together because this is one of a lot of people are talking about the Energon universe, which is great. We'll get to that later. But a definitely must pick up, must read, must enjoy has been, and again, I'm always shy away from the hype. When things get hyped, I kind of like not interested in it. For example, I never watched an episode of Lost. I haven't watched an episode of Heroes. I haven't watched an episode of Game of Thrones. I just can't get into them because everybody's into them. But when everyone was talking about this book, I was interested for the first time, and I'm glad I did. I'm talking about Ultimate Spider-Man issue number 1, and then Ultimate Spider-Man issue number 2. Definitely pick these up. Who gives a shit if it's the second or third printing, because you will not find the first printings. They're all sold out. These are worth every fucking penny. That's how good this story is. I really enjoyed it. Jonathan Hickman is the writer for this. He just came off of the Xmen run, and I think these two are home runs. I really enjoyed them. I can't wait for issue number 3. It's kind of like taking what we know about Spider-Man and twisting it and turning it on its head. But this is something that I highly recommend, and I can't say it enough. It is really good. What if Spider-Man didn't get bit by a spider and he went on to live his life as normal, only to realize that something's missing in my life? And he realizes that that something missing is not being bit by that spider and becoming Spider-Man. What if you could go back and fix that? Or what if you could change that right now as a married 2-kid Peter Parker? Got you interested? What if Uncle Ben was still alive? All of that stuff is in this book. So definitely check it out. All right, the next one. All right, the next book is Transformers number 6. Wow. Everything that we know or knew about Transformers is changing. And I think they're doing a great job with this series. You see like a dead Optimus Prime right here, or an injured Optimus Prime, who knows? But the fact that they're taking this iconic title and tilting it on his head is definitely, absolutely amazing. I think this new Energon universe is fantastic. I know I haven't done my comic book recaps in a while. I've taken a break from it, but I'm still enjoying these titles. I'm enjoying Transformers. I'm enjoying G.I. Joe. I'm enjoying Cobra Commander. I'm enjoying Duke. Every single Void Rivals is absolutely the start. If you're not reading Void Rivals, all of this other stuff doesn't make sense, or it loses it. Void Rivals is definitely a metaphor of what we see in the world today. What's going on with the, in our political view, what's going on over in Gaza, what's going on in Ukraine, all that stuff is in Void Rivals. Just take a deeper dive into it and you'll see that. That's where Robert Kirkman is pulling this from. It's just right there. You just have to look underneath and you'll see those are the elements he's using in writing with this. And it is wonderfully done. Everything is laid out, the whole story arc. It's like everything is kind of connecting. And I think it's very well done. I'm going to take a break for a second. Alrighty, sorry about that. We needed to take a break for a second, but let's get back into it. The next book we're going to focus in on is actually The Amazing Spider-Man number 45. So my regulars know that for a while I was having The Amazing Spider-Man as part of my regular pull list, but I think it's fair to say that the Zeb Wells Amazing Spider-Man has fallen flat on its face. It just lacks several elements which makes Spider-Man. I mean, it's such a struggle to get into this whole, like, one story arc after another. I just think Zeb Wells and Amazing Spider-Man is not a good mix. I'm not too keen. And for those that don't know, Mary Jane now has superpowers. She's known as, I think, Bomb Strike or something like that. But how many of Spider-Man's closest friends have to develop superpowers? I think it just, who else is there left? Gwen Stacy became Spider-Gwen. That turned out good. But I think Mary Jane is better without having any superhero abilities. That whole dynamic, it's tough for it to carry on. I understand that for so many years, but still, and now he's working for Harry Osborn, and this issue is like, it's just tough. I really love Amazing Spider-Man, but I just think that this whole Zeb Wells, him as a writer for Amazing Spider-Man, has been a big dud. But it's interesting that Sandman, has a little bit of Moon Knight syndrome. Like, he has multiple personalities now. It's just like, what the fuck, So I'm not. While Ultimate Spider-Man is definitely a pickup, I think this Amazing Spider-Man run with Zeb Wells has been a overall disappointment. I mean, your mileage may vary, but you let me know what you think. I'm not sure if I covered this in last month, but what the hell? Let's give it. I picked up Harley Quinn issue number 35, an homage to her first appearance This is another one that I'm kind of like, I'm not going to follow up with this. I picked it up because it's an homage to that iconic first appearance of Harley Quinn. I mean, I have the second and third appearance of Harley Quinn, but this one, the first appearance is one of the modern keys, most sought after book must have in the collection because it has skyrocketed in value. So an homage to that iconic cover is pretty cool with Harley Quinn. The story is like Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy are a couple now. DC is not shied away from their portrayal of same sex and stuff like that, but she is a professor, Harley Quinn, and her students get into trouble. It's in some type of psychiatric like dimension or something like that, and she has to go in and assist her students get out of this realm and back into the. Again, it's just like same thing. The artwork is kind of not really. It's not art. It's not a Gen X type of thing. It's just tough to identify with the artwork, and then the flow of it, how everything is written out, is completely like someone didn't take Ritalin or something. I don't know. It's like attention deficit disorder. Like everything is like all over the place. So it's just tough to like what the hell is going on. What it just a lot of clutter, a lot of terrible spacing in it. So I think this one is another dud as far as my opinion about that. Now, another book that I was able to pick up, let's go back to some good shit. So X-Men 202. We know X-Men 200 has been prominently featured with the trial of Magneto. The Sentinels return. This is kind of like at the end of that sequence, and I just think that with all of the X-Men 97, picking up this book is definitely was a nice pickup, and I just like the cover. This is like iconic X-Men, the whole era and stuff. I just love this. Of course, this is the time when X-Men could do no wrong. Everybody was an X-Men fan, and it was the book to get. I think that and G.I. Joe were like the two books that most of us were into religiously back in the day. So again, this cover art's not a really expensive. It's just something that I wanted to add. I love the artwork. I love Chris Claremont at his goodness. It's just one of those things that, hey, why not? So this is definitely one I picked up and added to my collection. There's no really major significance of it, but again, it's always cool to. I mean, you could read this stuff online. I do a lot of my comic recaps utilizing those tools, but to physically sit there at a quiet spot late at night and to go through these types of pages, you could smell the newspaper print. You could feel it in your fingertips. I mean, there's something that is just like romantic about that. So that's why, like, like I just mentioned about the Batman, Marvel used a different, but you could feel it's like you could feel the difference between a DC paper and a Marvel paper, and they're both good at this time. So I don't know if that's true or not, but for me, I could feel I could feel a Batman book, and I could feel an X-Men book. It sounds stupid, but it doesn't. It'll make sense if you've been there and done that. But that's what I get when I pick up this issue. So X-Men 202. So we have G.I. Joe 304. I still have to read. I haven't read anything after 300. I mean, 301 I read. I haven't read 302, 303, 304. So I still have to do all that. I don't know why, but I don't know why. It just seems like, just kind of been like a little bit burned out for a little bit. But anyway, I have been reading Duke and Cobra Commander, and both these books have been All right. Cobra Commander 2. I mean, I haven't done the recap of it. I don't know. But I'm a little disappointed with it. The fact that it seems like it's made for the G.I. Joe the movie fan. And utilizing the Cobra Law and stuff. And I don't know. It's not sitting well with me. And I hate to say that. I know like all these modern, like people that have jumped on the G.I. Joe bandwagon has been saying, oh, great. But at the same time, I'm having a tough time with Cobra Commander. I just don't like that whole Cobra Law connection. I think it takes away from the. I know it's not supposed to be Hamaverse or whatever, but at the same time, like, why? Like, you know, I mean, I know. I mean, I'm waiting to see how it connects to Void Rivals. You have this aliens and stuff like that, extraterrestrial. It's a bigger world than just what we know in the Hammerverse. But at the same time, it just irks me of that Cobra Law connection. I just like. I wish they didn't use Cobra Law because it's so ridiculous and stupid that it bothers me. And but again, like we're only 2-3 issues into this, so I still have to tough it out. But I'm at Duke on the meanwhile is phenomenal. I really love Duke. Duke is my favorite out of all of these so far. I really connect with it. I enjoy it. I like the new direction. I like it all. So it's weird because they're in the same world, but I like one title over the other. And you know, that's kind of like how they're going to come together. And of course, we mentioned that A Real American Hero is the Hammerverse, so that's something to behold. And again, Void Rivals, issue number 7. Wow. This is probably, I mentioned about the Red Light and Ultimate Spider-Man. Void Rivals is probably running far away as one of the must-reads currently going on in comics. Robert Kirkman, as I mentioned, all the underlying tones of what is going on in the real world today, but hiding it in this far off place in the galaxy. I mean, these are real world themes. This is like, you know, Ireland, Northern Ireland, you know, India, Pakistan. This is, Palestine, Israel. All of this stuff. You know, even Russia, Ukraine, all of this stuff that we've seen in history of people that are identically carbon copies of one another, neighbors, even brothers, even North and South, like, you know, are pegged against each other because of politics and someone's, you know, someone with power's personal agenda. Think about that. You know, we just had a former president who's self-serving, doesn't care about really all he's doing is self-serving his own overinflated waistline. But it just shows how that manifests to what this outcome is, the outcome we see in real world, and how it all starts like in that type of grassroots type of thing. So it's a lot to digest, a lot to think about. And I think Void Rivals has far surpassed my expectations. It is an enjoy to read. You know, the Void Rivals doesn't have, you know, there's no G.I. Joe in it. There was Transformers in it for a brief second, but at the same time, it's its own story. But how that story, you know, is going to connect into the Transformers and G.I. Joe is going to be pretty compelling. So we're not at that point yet. We've gone kind of like a little glimpses, but I think we're on the cusp of that starting to unfold. So that's what makes, you know, Void Rivals 7 and kind of going forward into the double digits really, really compelling. So Void Rivals, definitely a wonderful pickup. Anyway, that does it for this month's comic book pickup. Once again, I'd like to thank our sponsors, famous faces and funnies. And in the next episode, we'll finally do our second graded magazine unboxing, thanks to our friends CGC Sports Illustrated. So stay tuned for that, because we have some interesting books to look at and how they impact pop culture. Because like I'll mention in that video, magazines and comic books may be similar, but they're completely different, because magazine reached a bigger demographic. It has real world implications in it. So there's more people that are going to be compelled to collect or invest in magazines just because of significance. And with print media dying, being a dead media, now is the time to definitely get into graded magazines. So I'm really excited to jump on board. Yet another thing to collect. Anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you shortly. Have a good one. Bye.
Everyone wants to be the Cadbury bunny, because only he brings delicious Cadbury cream eggs, while others may keep trying. Nobody